Hello and welcome back to episode number 2 of my devlog series for a survivors-like game called Wizard's Keep. This is my first attempt at making a game, and if you want to keep up with my progress, consider subscribing. Last episode I went over the general concept of the game, and I made a wizard player character and started working on the firing and projectile logic, as well as some very basic placeholder UI. This time I've made some more progress. I drew a little goblin enemy with a walking and attacking animation. This replaced the placeholder Godot icon, and I think the goblin looks cute. I also implemented logic for enemies to have a chance to spawn as an elite, granting boosts in health, damage dealt, and experience dropped. The health and damage increase is a 2x multiplier, while the experience dropped is a 5x multiplier. So bigger risk, but bigger reward. Making these a sort of mini boss and a way to break up the monotony of a wave of a single type of enemy. I even messed with a super simple shader that makes these elite enemies red as a temporary way to make sure I'm actually spawning them occasionally, and I also really wanted to mess with shaders. They seem really intimidating, and I barely understand what I did even though it's a few lines of code. I also wanted to give the player feedback for when damage was dealt to an enemy, so I made damage text that would pop up and drift upwards until eventually disappearing. The text was typically white, but if the hit is a critical hit, the text would be yellow and slightly larger in font size. The critical hit chance for the player, by the way, is 5%. Now, even with some progress, the game screen still looks empty to me, so I thought the next steps I should take is make a background. I made a tile set in Sprite and created a backdrop for my level using Godot's tile map layer. It was really fun iterating the different versions as I then set up auto tiling, meaning I could essentially paint the background on and Godot knew what tile belongs next to another. With a few mistakes here and there, I didn't get it exactly perfect. There are plenty of tutorials on how to set this up on YouTube, and they do a better job of explaining it than I would, and I've linked one, for example, in the description. Although it's a simple background, having it makes what I have so far feel much better and polished, if that makes sense. With the first enemy in a background, I decided to draw an experience and health drop for when you take one of these little guys out. I got my assets for these drops made, and then I made the signal logic for properly spawning a drop and then healing or adding XP to the player reflected in the HUD. How it works in short is that defeating an enemy emits a signal to my level constructor script alongside 2 bits of information: the position where the enemy died and the amount of XP to drop. The constructor then places an experience orb scene in that given location with the appropriate value. Health drops currently have a 20% chance to spawn after defeating an enemy, but the same logic applies when spawned as the experience orbs. I also added a radius to the drops that if the player gets close enough, the drops will automatically move towards the player until a collision occurs. Once the collision happens, the drop is removed and more signals are emitted, this time to the HUD to appropriately track and update the XP and health of the player. Now, if you've been keeping up with my content, I've been uploading a new type of video where I have the full recordings of me drawing the pixel art for this game. The first one was me drawing the player character wizard, the firebolt projectiles, and some UI elements. The second video, which was last week, was the first half of me drawing the tile set that you see in the game footage. And there's no talking, only background music and my progress. My thought process was that it could serve as something to have in the background while you work, whether it's on your own game or any other passion. So while I don't expect these long-form videos to be a hit or get a lot of views, take a look if you're interested and just want something up in the background. And I apologize if you get ads on them. I don't have the ability to take those off the video yet, and so I apologize if that disrupts your workflow in any way. But back to the game. I've been talking about my progress and all I've done, but let me tell you that I've had to push myself in some ways to get the drawings done. While I do enjoy drawing, I enjoy the coding much more. And I think that's all right, but something to be aware of for myself, because that means that I need to try to sneak in more drawings wherever I can in order to not create a bottleneck. So that wraps up the progress I've made so far. My goals for next time are to work more on the enemy logic and making it so there's better player feedback when dealing damage. I want it to feel good when you hit the enemy with a firebolt. I also really want to begin messing with more complicated shaders and particles. Currently, I just have the really simple one on elite enemies, but it's placeholder and doesn't look too great. Thank you so much for watching, and if you liked the video, consider subscribing and engaging with it through comments and likes. I look forward to having you check out the next video of this devlog series, as well as the rest of my content. There's a lot more progress to make, but I'm happy with my progress so far, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope to see you next time, and goodbye.